Hey, welcome to episode 150 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. So, you know, being out and about in the world again after the last few years is exciting. And I'm meeting a lot of new, really amazing people. And some months ago, I had a chance to visit a Toastmasters group, which was incredible. They're just an awesome group, and I met Dina and Matt, and oh my gosh, you know how what joy it is just to meet great people. Since then, we've gone out to eat, we've gone on a pizza crawl, and through those conversations, I've been privileged. They've shared some of their story, and their story is simply very incredible. And and it's a story I wouldn't have known anything about if they hadn't shared it. And it's such a powerful reminder that like one of my challenges is very audible. Like every time you hear me speak, you can hear a speech impediment. But so many challenges in life that we all go through are invisible to other people. But of course we very much know the challenge inside and out ourselves and are affected by it. So I'm excited to share the story of courage and gritty determination against all odds. It's Matt and Dina's story is just amazing. So absolutely stay tuned. But stay tuned. First, this.
Today's guest, Matt and Dina Lantzer.
Hey, Matt and Dina. Welcome to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast.
Hey,
Hi.
Jason.
Hey, Jason. Thank you for having us.
It's just such a thrill, and I'm excited for this important conversation. Matt, usually I will read the description at the very beginning, but you offered to write it, and you wrote it so beautifully. I like had the thought a week ago, hey, this is not mine to read. So will you please read the description you wrote?
Yes, I will. Matt and Dina Lantzer, that's us, have been married for 32 and a half years. We have 3 adult children and 4 grandchildren, all girls, 4 granddaughters. Our roadmap here was very unconventional, to say the least. We both had very rough and traumatic childhoods with parents that modeled the antithesis of a healthy relationship. When I was 18 years old and Dina was 21, we found out that we were expecting a child and decided to tie the knot despite not having known each other for just barely over a year. As a couple, we have navigated depression, alcoholism, prescription drug addiction, adultery, loss of loved ones, rebellious children, emotional and mental abuse. But through it all, we have remained on the journey together. We have persevered and overcome just about every roadblock and obstacle imaginable to be with you on the next episode of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. to share our insight and wisdom on what resiliency truly means. We openly and humbly share our story in the hopes that it can help others. Jason.
Oh, you didn't write the word Jason. It's just you said the word Jason, so it comes back to me, right?
Back to you. Correct. I'm throwing the football back to you.
I caught it. Thanks. So Matt, what was it like to? So you've experienced all that over 32 years. What was it like to actually write it down in that form?
Well, it puts it into perspective for me, because when you're in the living in it day to day, sometimes you don't realize the bigger picture of what you're actually doing and going through. And to put it on paper and then read it out loud, it's kind of a shock factor, sometimes when I step back and try to do an out of body experience and look at my life and realize how the heck did I even get here? And when you're doing it just day to day, it's a challenge. But when you look at the big picture of it, it's a miracle, really, that we're sitting here together, still alive and healthy and in love. So
I think we're going to have a lot of mic drops during this episode. But you said the first one, when you're doing a day to day, it's a challenge. But when you look back on it, it's a miracle. That's amazing.
Yes. I'm sure you have experienced that too, Jason, in your own life, where when you're living day to day and you're doing all the things that you do, you don't get the full scope of it. When we met you and you told us a little bit about your life, you are a living miracle too. So we appreciate you allowing us to come on and share our story. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. And Dina, what's it like? What was it like just now to hear Matt read that beautiful thing he wrote?
For me, the first thing that popped up was just pride and joy, because Matt's come a long ways in speaking and getting comfortable telling the story and talking about his life and talking about his experiences. It's not always been the way it's been. So I'm like bursting like a mother with a child learning to walk. I'm bursting with joy watching Matt come into his fullness. And he's a gifted writer and a gifted communicator. And but I'm probably have a bias.
So Matt, you've been coming into communicating more fully and telling your story. Dina, did you have to come into telling your story, or is it something you naturally do?
Yeah, I seem to have a gift for gab. I love talking to other people about very vulnerable, deep conversations and topics, because I think it helps other people decompress that stuff. And I think it helps people to be able to get it out, and it starts that healing process. A lot of times when you tell your story, like Matt was saying, it's not living in the day to day. And when you tell your story, I think it takes layers of trauma off, and it gets easier to it gets easier to acknowledge that, oh, this happened to me, but you know what? I made it through that and I'm still alive. And so maybe it wasn't as bad as what I think it is. So I just naturally have that teacher instinct in me and that communication instinct in me. And I'm just very expressive and very extroverted in that regard. But Matt's the opposite of that, which has been, like I said, extremely great, awesome for me to see how he's stepping out of his shell intentionally to, share our life experiences in the hopes that it makes the change for somebody else.
They often say, of course, that opposites attract. And how has it been for both of you navigating opposites within your marriage?
I think that's a really good question. We struggled with that for a long time until really kind of coming to the realization that it's not necessarily opposites. I have strengths and I have weaknesses. Matt has strengths and weaknesses, and it just so happens to be that my weaknesses are his strengths and vice versa.
Wow.
And so together we make more of a complete unit. And so if I try to do it by myself, I feel my weaknesses. If we're doing it together though, I don't necessarily have those. So that I kind of remember the time frame in our marriage, probably 15 years into our marriage, before that became like a significant realization that
What was a challenge that you wouldn't mind talking about that time where you really rely on each other's strengths and found that balance when going through the challenge?
Well, when Dina said strengths and weaknesses, I guess a couple that come to mind. One of my strengths is consistency, loyalty, hard work, good, work ethic, trying to just be even keel, which sometimes can be kind of a negative, I do admit, but over the long run, it has helped us stay, avoid those super low lows. And, sometimes, it does kind of be, a negative where I don't get all excited and joyful, which, I do want to, but just the consistency of going to work every day and providing for my family has, what is something that my father instilled in me. I watched him do that, and it was that, what's the word? Just the confidence that you have in your provider that they're going to provide for you, and the security and the stability is something that I try to provide for my family, and especially my kids. And I think Dina has taken a lot of that on herself, and I've seen her, over the past 30 some years, realize that is a virtue that she wants to extol. And like a weakness is, Dina has shown me that I need to express myself. She expresses herself, every day with her family, with friends, with other people. And I was never that cheerleader, if you a good example or a good word to use. And I've tried to take some of that virtue from her and use that for myself. So again, with the marriage, opposites attract. That may be true at the beginning. And if people can just figure out how to take each other's strengths and their positives and instill them in their own lives, you're just going to grow into a huge bouquet of flowers, in life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a challenge, but if you can figure those things out early in a relationship, the earlier the better. And some people fight because they're supposedly opposites, but I think it's the greatest thing in the world. I wouldn't want to marry myself. So if I met somebody exactly like myself, I'd be like, yeah, see ya. So it worked out very well. So
For sure.
yes.
So Dina, what words of encouragement would you give a couple who's at a stage where each partner's weaknesses is driving the other absolutely crazy, and they keep triggering each other because things aren't changing fast enough? What advice or what ideas would you give? What do you
Well,
offer?
Jason, that's like my area of expertise, triggers. One of the things,
Triggers don't happen in a marriage at all, but
no, not at all, ever.
hypothetically, if they did.
Right. The beautiful thing about, and that's actually, I think, when we look back and realize some of the key components that really allowed us to stay married and stay through everything, was to realize that when we get triggered, it's us. It's something in us, right? So when Matt does something that triggers me, I look at myself and say, what's in me that's being activated, right? Gaber Mate says something about somebody else pulls the trigger, but you have the ammunition inside you that's being activated.
Who said that? Who said that?
Gaber Mate, or GABOR MATE. He's a clinical psychologist with some funny accent.
Oh, cool. And what did he say again?
Well, paraphrased, he says somebody else pulls the trigger, but you have to remember you have the ammunition inside you that's exploding, right? So if I was being triggered, I couldn't be triggered. Let me put it that way. I couldn't be triggered if I didn't have a wound already there, right? So the advice that I like to give my friends in that is that number one is that you look at yourself first, right? And then also remember that your husband's or your spouse's weaknesses, the things that drive you crazy, might actually be the one key component that you're missing in your life. Like, it was, like I said, just such a profound understanding when I realized that one of the things that was significant with me and Matt and I is that I'm more of the type A leader personality. I'm more of that outgoing, almost masculine kind of energy, the alpha, if you will, in our family. And we struggled for a very, very long time because we didn't feel like we fit into the mold of me being the quiet, submissive one that's just supposed to let Matt lead and do all of that. Because Matt's gift, and when we found this out in a personality test, Matt's gift is support. Matt's gift is being that person that lifts up and supports and comes to the needs or meets the needs of the leader. And generally, the way we're conditioned is that the man in the family is supposed to be the leader, and the woman in the family is supposed to be the follower, and the man makes all the decisions and the woman just submits. And we struggled against that for so long. And again, one of those things I really wish we would have known, and I know you would have wished we would have known, like in the beginning, was we did not fit into the typical mold individually. And then together, I mean, our family could have soared a whole lot faster, a whole lot further, just not fighting those molds, I guess. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yes. So you a personality test helped you both discover that, but so this gets into when couples have big problems or things they can't figure out, like that must have been kind of a maze before you both figured that out.
oh yeah.
It can just seem overwhelming and almost irreconcilable. What tips do you have as a couple on giving the patience to challenges to actually figure them out and come to new conclusions like you expressed?
Well, I think the first thing we did was we said divorce is not an option. And that was significant because from the moment we met and moved in together, 2 weeks later, and all of the other things that we went through, it was every week, every other week, I was either kicking him out or I was leaving or he was leaving or kicking me out. Like we were in just nonstop, ready to separate literally from week one, basically.
So there was a lot of drama going on, like constantly.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. From the get-go with us. And it seemed like we would just get in these big raging fights and arguments with each other. And like I said, packing bags, we're done. And something would always draw us back to each other. Somehow, some way, one of us would say, okay, sorry, let's figure this out. And again, it was like in one of those key components where in that same time frame when I realized that my weaknesses are Matt's strengths and he could actually really benefit me in that regard, we also at that point decided divorce is not an option. And so when divorce is not an option, it's not your first two, it's not the first run to, and taking it off the table altogether forced us then to have to figure out how are we going to solve the problem that's in front of us. If divorce is not an option, how are we going to solve a lot of the issues that we've had, right? A lot of the big, massive fights that we had, from, addictions to adultery to, clinical depression for both of us at one time or another. How are we going to figure this out? Now, Jason, neither one of us were physically abusive to each other. And I came from a childhood, like that's what I experienced in my childhood, was a lot of domestic violence. And so that was like a number one priority. Had Matt been physically abusive, there would be no conversation today about this, right? And vice versa. But so I just want to like kind of preface that when we said divorce is not an option, it was because we could do that, because we were safe enough to figure out our stuff while
You
we
were
were
safe enough to figure out your stuff. That's a
right.
powerful phrase.
Right. Well, because it's almost like fighting in a padded room
Mm,
with big
mm.
gloves on. We're all, it's like the Michelin Man in a padded room, and we're kind of duking it out, right? Right.
It's a great image.
But so we had a component where we were able to do that together, right? Because we both came from and brought a lot of trauma into our relationship. And again, that kind of comes down to that component of saying, it's not, if Matt does something that triggers me, it is not Matt, right? There's a quote in the Bible that says, why are you worried about the speck in your spouse's eye or your neighbor's eye when you have a plank in your own, right?
Mm.
And that again became one of those probably like key components for us, don't you think? And then Matt, also, I have to say, and I'm going to give it to you, Matt, his superpower is grace.
Wow. So,
Yeah.
that was a major decision you made together, Matt, to say, hey, we've been going in circles doing this dance where one of us is threatening to leave every other week. How did you finally come to the realization that, hey, we both choose that for us and our marriage, that divorce is not an option?
Well, I think everybody, when they're a child, they see, their main influence when it comes to relationships is their parents or their guardians or whoever is raising them at the time. And my childhood, in particular, was black and white. It was an amazing childhood up until I was 8 years old, and then my parents divorced. And it was at that age, particularly, it's from everything I've read and heard from other people, it's probably the worst age to have your parents divorce at when you're between 7 and 9 years old, because you're so vulnerable. Your mind and your heart are so vulnerable at that time that it's devastating. And my parent, it could not have gone any worse as far as the divorce goes. I was caught in the middle, and I went to live with my mother for the majority of the rest of my childhood, and her goal was to use me as a pawn in the divorce and for child support and acrimony. So I was caught right in the middle of it. I ended up in court, with between my mom and my dad, and as a young teenager, I had to testify against my father for lack of child support, and it was just terrible. So my point being, my role models at that time were my parents, and when it came to a marriage and a relationship. And what I did, and I encourage anybody to do this, if they go through anything like that as a child, use that and make it as into a positive attribute for yourself. If you didn't like what you were going through and what your parents put you through, then change and do things differently. I know it's a challenge to do. I mean, it's easy to say that and then to actually do it, but sometimes you really got to dig down. You know, when you get older and you get into a relationship, you get into marriage, you really have to dig down and hold your ground sometimes and force yourself to stay, you know, and as challenging as it is, I didn't want to put my kids through what I went through. And if that meant staying in the marriage and figuring it out somehow, whatever it took, you know, like Dina said, neither one of us were physically abusive. That's kind of an extreme, you know. If something like that happens, it's a different story. But for us, we didn't ever do anything that was too fatal that you couldn't come back from. You know, Dina did attempt suicide. Obviously, that didn't work out, thank God. But neither one of us did anything that we couldn't repair. So you got to really dig down. And a lot of times it was for the kids. I did not want to put my kids through what I went through. And if you have to use that sometimes, then you got to do it. That didn't mean I didn't love Dina anymore, but sometimes it's like grasping at straws. You got to pull at whatever is available, and if that's what it takes, that's what it took.
Mm-hmm.
So when things happened, when Dina hurt me, when I hurt Dina, you know, that's inevitable. You can't go through life and not be hurt. It's how you react to that pain is what's important, and how you can use that the next time something comes up. And, you know, every time we hurt each other, we grew. Whether we saw it at the time or not, we grew. And some people say it's a scar. I don't really look at it like that. I think you're growing stronger every time you get hurt, because how you use that pain is going to affect you the next time you get triggered and you get hurt. And you keep pushing through. And like I said, you just got to dig down deep sometimes and find a reason to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And I encourage everybody to use whatever reason they can just to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
The simplicity of what you said. If you don't like something your parents did in your childhood, then change.
Yeah.
I mean, immensely challenging, but there's a sudden simple clarity to that statement. Like your parents, in a way, your parents inspired you to live the life you live now, only not by positively always inspiring you, but you saw an example and said, I don't want to put my kids through that.
Yes. And my parents, I'm not saying that they were bad parents. They gave me a lot of good virtues and attributes that are a part of me now. But when it came to the divorce, that was devastating to me. It changed me from that day on, and I could not consciously do that to anybody else, you know. And so I, you know, just take things from your childhood when you're younger, and if things happen that you don't like, that caused you pain, then some people just continue that chain, that cycle, and pass that on to their kids. And, you know, it could potentially never end. It could potentially be fatal. But figure out the things from your childhood and, you know, do what you can to correct them and change them. and make yourself happier, and then make your kids happier. And you know, if everybody in the world did that, it would be a completely different place. You know, I know it's easy to say these things, but it's possible. So anybody who thinks that it's impossible to change the cycle of destruction from their childhood, it's not. You can fix it.
Absolutely.
What would you add? I mean, this discussion is so profound and so needed because there's so much suffering around continuing generational trauma in the world. What are you moved to add to this conversation at this point, Dina?
I would just, 100% agree with what Matt just said. Your childhood traumas, again, that's one of the things I'm extremely passionate about, is helping people move through their childhood traumas and create a better life for themselves and a better life for their children. I mean, Matt's experience as a child developed in him such empathy and grace toward everybody, except for probably himself. But he has just the most incredible amount of empathy and grace towards everybody, that, and that lack of judgment, right? He just does not have that desire or any of that. I don't even think he has the ability necessarily to judge somebody for their behavior. And I think that moment in his childhood was so pivotal for him that he adopted that belief. And that, honestly, I have to say, I mean, that has been such the glue probably that our relationship needed, right? Because I've done so much to destroy our marriage, and while I'm trying to destroy myself. And Matt had everyone sometimes yelling at him that he just needs to get divorced. We just need to separate. And that was a big challenge, is to always have people going against our marriage. We didn't have a lot of family support. We didn't have a lot of friends support to say, hey, you guys just need to stick it out. We just didn't have that. We had to figure this out on our own, and again, just kind of commit to doing it differently than what we were shown. I mean, I lived in a family that my parents should have gotten divorced. They should have been separated for the safety and the well-being of everyone involved, but they didn't. And Matt was the opposite. But that's what I said, Matt has been literally that glue that has allowed us to, because I can promise you, I'm a challenge to live with.
So, I mean, we're each human, and we each bring challenges, unique challenges to any relationship we're in. Dina, how did you come to the point of accepting the responsibility, choosing to accept the responsibility for the challenges you sometimes bring to the marriage, rather than just blaming the challenges on Matt, or blaming the challenges on other people, or blaming the challenges on your childhood? I mean, like what we just heard is you are radically accepting responsibility for your part. That's courageous. How how do you get to that point in life?
Well, Jason, I blamed Matt for most of my challenges. I did. I blamed Matt for my choices. Most of our marriage. It was a really strong sense of needing to figure out how to let go of my core childhood wounds. For me, it was life and death. I had to figure this out because it was literally killing me. And it was in that process of learning that it was me that had the issues, not everyone around me, that I was the one that was creating the circumstances in my life, that I was the one that was doing it. And it was literally stepping into that place of taking responsibility, because quite frankly, my belief is that when you blame everyone else around you, you have no power to change it. When you take full responsibility.
Just one sec. I need to highlight this. When you blame everyone around you, you have no power to change it.
That's right.
Just needed to highlight, because that's a huge phrase.
Yeah. Well, when you
Continue.
take
I just
responsibility.
wanted to.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's good. I'm never aware of my profound statements that need a pause to digest. But when you take responsibility, full responsibility for all of it, you put yourself in the place of changing it all. You now become the powerful force in your life. You become the dominating character in the movie. You take first seat. You drive the car, right? You're no longer a passenger and allowing every which wind to blow you off, because now you have the strength and the power to make the changes that you need to make. And
I'm sorry. Continue.
no, that's really only come to me in 2019. 2019 when I really fully realized that. And it really empowered me to make the changes that I needed to make and stop blaming him and stop blaming everyone around me and really step into the power of who I am. You know?
It's so deceptive before a person gets to that point, right? Because it feels like blaming people is if I'm sure there's I know because I've done it too. But when we blame someone, that feels like we have power to be blaming someone else. That's not mine. I declare it's your thing.
Right.
How would you compare the two types of, like, the power you felt when you were blaming people to the power you feel now?
Well, when I was in my victim, right? That's what I call that victim where everything is everybody else's fault. It's not mine. I continue to make the same choices. I continue to when I don't take responsibility for my actions, I continue to do the same detrimental things to myself. And what that causes is extreme anger, rage, depression, feeling lost, feeling confused, feeling stuck, not having the ability to change anything about your life. I hated that feeling of feeling stuck. Like I cannot do anything about where I'm at right now because my parents, because I was abused as a child, because Matt was a jerk, because the government shut the world down. It's everybody's fault but mine. And that made me feel extremely, well, quite frankly, extremely depressed. Like extreme despair set in before I realized this. And then realizing that I was the captain of my ship, like talk about empowerment, courage, boldness, excitement, energy, gratitude, joy, bliss, happiness. I mean, like, there is nothing that I am not able to personally do because I know who's driving the car now.
Matt, what has it been like for you since to witness these changes in Dina's outlook? Not only witness, but be involved and experience these changes in Dina's outlook and her. What has that been like?
Well, being with Dina pretty much every day now, and we've been together since the end of 1989. So, and I was adding it up a couple months ago. How many days were that I have not been with her, been seeing her, and it's not very many, Jason. So the day to day, it's, again, to go back to what I've said before, and maybe it was off camera where I said it, but when you're in the day to day with somebody, sometimes you don't realize how much they're growing. When you have a child, when you have a pet, anything that grows, you don't really realize what the transformation that they're making. So doing something like this, doing things like Toastmasters, hearing her speeches, just hearing her talk on the phone to friends, it's just an amazement, of wonder for me to realize that she's the same person, but she's not. She's the same loving, caring, generous, amazing person, but it's almost like she has become just a different miracle, basically. When she attempted suicide in 1997, and that was kind of similar to my parents divorcing when I was 8. The trauma that inflicted on me at that time. But since then, she has gotten up every day, and sometimes she does a little bit, sometimes she does a lot, but I can just tell, I can sense her goal in life is just to become better every day. And so sometimes when I step back and just look at her and watch her, it's just like, it just amazes me that she has that grit and determination to just become better, no matter what area that she's working on at that time. She constantly becomes better. And that's something I struggled with a lot in my life. I had depression for a long time. I was on prescription medication that was slowly taking away the life from me, and I realized that at that time, and I corrected that issue. But I suffered from depression for quite a number of years. Our daughter was getting in trouble, and it just sucked the life out of me, the joy of life. And being with her has, she saved my life, basically, whether she realizes that or not. But she's been that joy, that spark, that fire that I needed to motivate me, to instill confidence in me, to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And sometimes I push back. I admit, a person can only take so much sometimes, but she does it in a loving way, and that's the important part. When you are pushing somebody to become better, do it out of love. Don't do it out of control. Just do it out of love, and that's the key for a lot of people, is that they need that. But just watching her, it's just amazing. You've only known her for a few months, Jason, but you can tell that she, from when you first start talking to her, that she has something in her that, I take for granted sometimes. But somebody like you that just met her, you knew right away that there was something special about her. So,
I feel so good.
Yeah, yeah, to reiterate at this, like in the last few months, my experience of you two and has been like going out to wonderful places to eat. We went to a bunch of pizza places with a group of friends last week. It's been this amazing, inspiring experience, and this comes back to how invisible problems or difficulties in a marriage can be to those outside a marriage. I wouldn't know as any of your stories about the challenges and the overcoming unless you had it, but you graciously told me. But so would you both talk briefly about that, about what was it like to know as a couple, like when you were going through struggle, that you could put on the happy face in the community, but come back home and have this really horribly challenging thing to deal with. What was that like?
I wasn't, in a lot of our challenges, I wasn't necessarily in the community. I was at home and I was in church and sharing a lot of our challenges within a close knit group of friends that I could reside and, trust and speak to. So I didn't have to put on a happy smiley face when we were going through a lot of our heavy challenges. Matt did, though. And that was, I think, one of the reasons why he developed fibromyalgia and the severe depression, because I think he kept it all in.
yes, I definitely internalize 95% of my thoughts and feelings, and that's not a healthy way to go through life. It's possible, but you're going to develop, sooner or later, you're going to develop physical symptoms, because you can only internalize so much before, and I don't drink, I don't do illegal drugs, which some people turn to escape, to blow off steam, however you want to say it. So I don't really have, I've never, well, not never, recently I don't use those harmful negative things, because ultimately they're going to hurt you. Some of those things may feel good at the time, and I could go on, adultery and just, the list of harmful things that some people do. And I gave those up, and I'm again looking to her to express how I'm feeling, express the issues that I'm having. And it's such a healthier way to to live. You know, if you can talk to your spouse, talk to your child, talk to your parents, whoever it is, in a nice and respectful way, and let them know what's going on, what you're feeling, what's triggering you, 99 times out of 100, it's going to come out positive. It's going to be constructive. And I would encourage everybody to do that. Don't internalize everything. I have developed quite a number of afflictions over the years because I do that too much. And you know, lately I've been kind of paying the price health wise, but I'm still here and I'm still going, and I'm learning and I'm growing, and I'm just going to become better. Mm-hmm. And she's a big role model for me for that, to keep going, to just keep trying to improve, no matter how you can do it. Just keep trying. And you going to Toastmasters, Jason, that was, you know, you're more of an inspiration than you'll probably ever know to people. And just the people that I've talked to, they love you, they respect you, they're amazed by what you've done with your life. And I'm sure you've heard that before, but I'm going to say it again because it's very true. You know, there's not a whole lot of people like you in the world, but every time you talk to people, you're leaving a little part of you with them, and you never know what that seed's going to do. And I encourage you to keep going, Jason. You're an amazing person. Sorry, I won't do that to you again.
That's so good to hear. And it's good to hear, and I'm working on taking things like that in more. So thank you very much. Yes. And before we go and get to the last few things, in my and what I do, I talk about the power of doing our imperfect best. And what that means to me is we have a vision for our lives, and then we go for it. Then when mistakes and imperfections come up, instead of stopping or giving up on what we want, we learn from that, and then keep moving forward with more information. What does doing your imperfect best mean to each of you?
Go ahead, and
first. Doing my imperfect best is just my life. I struggled with perfectionism for the majority of my life. I really struggled with it, and passed that trait certainly on to my children. That need to have to do everything perfectly and do it right and do it best, and therefore developed beliefs in myself, and certainly passed that belief that I'm not good enough into myself and my children because of that. And it's only really been probably the last few years when I started to stop blaming everybody else for my stuff and started taking personal responsibility, when I gave myself the grace to not have to be perfect, because there's no amount of perfection that I can possibly do. Now, I strive for excellence. I do believe that everything I put my hand to, I should do it as unto the Lord and be excellent in what I do. And recognizing that sometimes even in my excellence, I'm going to not be perfect. And believe me, Jason, that's been probably one of the biggest challenges that I've had in this growth time in my life, is to recognize that I can't be perfect. I'm never gonna be perfect, and to be okay be okay with that, right? And just knowing that me trying my best, me doing my best, I guess there is no try in my book. You do or do not. There is no try according to Yoda, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do everything with a level of being intentionally excellent in what I do. And then give myself the grace to know that it's not going to be perfect.
Amazing. Ma'am, what does doing your imperfect best mean to you?
Well, see, I have the challenge of being married to somebody who is perfect. So,
You're funny.
no, Jason, yeah, nothing, nothing in your life is, I mean, what's the definition of perfect? I guess my definition would be, is something the way you want it to be? Are you the way you want to be? And if you are, then you're perfect. Nobody else can tell you whether you're perfect or imperfect.
Wow.
My philosophy for quite a while is, I don't know exactly what the Bible verse is, but judge not, and you will be judged. Lest you be judged, yes. So for a long time, I felt judged by my family members, especially by my parents. I still have some of that in me where I feel that, and I don't like that feeling. I don't like to feel judged by other people. So what I've tried to do, and that goes back to, if there's something in your childhood that you didn't like, then change it. Otherwise, you're going to pass it on to your kids, and they're going to do the same thing. I almost guarantee you that your kids will do the same thing that you do. So I learned long ago, well, I don't like to be judged, so therefore I'm not going to judge other people. Everybody has their own struggles, their own issues, their own challenges, their own imperfections. It's not my place to tell you whether you're perfect or imperfect, and please don't do that to me. So when we go to Toastmasters, Toastmasters was initially a challenge for me, because part of Toastmasters is to judge other people, and I struggled with that, and I still struggle with that. I have a hard time telling other people that they did something wrong, because it's not my place to do that. Well, at Toastmasters, it kind of is. So that's been a good it's been a good learning experience for me to judge in a nice and constructive way, so that that person can improve, because that's why they're there. So I've tried to take that philosophy in life, where Dina, when she tells me something, gives me advice, I used to feel like I was being controlled and being judged and being criticized. And I've tried to take that and turn it around and look at it from her perspective. Well, why does she think that about me? Oh, that kind of makes sense. And I will try to improve that part. Now, that's easy to say, because sometimes we do get in a little tiffs, but it's something that I realize I'm not going to view anybody as perfect, and nobody's going to view me as perfect. We're all, imperfect beings. But as long as you are happy with who you are and happy with the way you did something, that's really what matters to me. So
amazing, powerful. So we started off our with your introduction. Dina, could we close with the amazing words you wrote on Facebook? Was it last week?
Yeah, I think it was last week. Yeah, someone had said that love is a choice, and I recognized immediately that that's not true. Love is a destination. Grace is a choice. Forgiveness is a choice. Selflessness is a choice. And I have to say, love is the reward. of making all those choices.
My gosh, you two as individuals are amazing. If I met you two separately, those both would have been great days. You're just kind people. You just have profound things to say, and as a couple, you are so powerful together and so loving and have so much to share. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your courage. Thank you for sharing your inspiration. I could just keep going, but
Running.
it's over now and it's time to go. But thank you.
Well, thank you, Jason, for everything you do and having us on as guests and asking awesome questions and just doing everything that you've done. I wish you continued success on your podcast. We're proud to be number 150.
Yes, so excited.
Go
Thank you so
150,
much,
yay!
Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you for persisting
Yes.
through.
Yeah, thank you both too. Wow. 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 So we just don't know people's lives until we have a conversations with them. We don't know the challenges they've been through for sure, and we don't know the inspiration they have to offer. We don't know either side of the coin. As a community, we can help people. We can either bring out the worst in each other or bring out the best in each other. We can either help convince each other to give up and just do the bare minimum, or we can help each other ennoble each other to be courageous and go for what we really want in life. Matt and Dina during this last hour have helped me be a better person. This conversation has brought out more of the best of me. I hope. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you really reflect on this conversation and what it's brought to your life. And encourage you. I encourage you to talk to the people around you, even the people you don't know that well, who seem like you want to know them better. Start asking curious questions. We each are amazing. We each have something to share. We each have phenomenal challenges. Let's bring all that out in each other and celebrate it. Thanks for tuning in, whether you're watching this live or on replay. You are amazing. Keep bringing your brilliance to the world. Until next week, I'm your host, Jason Freeman.